Hello, I'm Ollie, and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, I'm doing the Deja Vu tag. So this was curated by Walker Wright, and I was tagged by MJ at Reading This Life. MJ did a fantastic intro for this, where she kept on forgetting that she'd done the intro, which was very amusing and made me chuckle quite a lot. So thank you for tagging me, MJ. There are how many questions are there? There's 11 questions plus the tag some people at the end. So let me dive in and get on with it. So the first question is. Do you reread and how often? And the answer to that is I've started rereading more recently. So I didn't used to reread at all, really, or very little anyway. I think as I get older, and also as I've started doing this channel and I'm thinking about books that I, remember as being great that I want to talk about on the channel, I'm rereading more than I used to. One of the other, so things, for example, since I started the channel, so Swan Song by Robert R. McCammon was a reread for me. At the Mountains of Madness by Lovecraft was a reread for me. So there's been quite a few things that I've reread in order to talk about them on the channel. But in the past, I wasn't that much of a rereader, to be honest with you. Where I do tend to reread is with series. So because I have a terrible habit of starting a series and then not finishing it, I will quite often end up reading the initial books in the series again in order to get myself up to speed to continue them. So yeah, that's one exception to my not much rereading rule. So the Gore books, for example, I had read, I think, the first 3 of those. So I've reread those before continuing with the series. Right, next question. Why do you or don't you reread? So I guess I've kind of answered that question. So I suppose I don't reread much because there's so many books to read and I don't necessarily feel the need to go over old ground again. I'm certainly, I hear some people who have a favourite book that they read every year. I would definitely can't ever see myself doing that. So when I do reread, it's usually with a purpose, i.e. to remind myself of a book so I can talk about it, or to catch myself up so I can continue a series, rather than just rereading a book for the sake of it. So I think that's my answer to that one. What have been your favourite books to reread? So the 87th Precinct series, which I've done a library tour video of, which will be going up tomorrow, so look out for that. So there's 55 books in that series. I had read many of them over the years, so certainly a few dozen of them over the years, but not all of them. And I recently... when was it? I suppose probably just before I started the channel, actually, I finished doing a full reread or a full read through of all of the books in the series, and that was an absolute delight. Partly because they're wonderful books, but also because reading them in order brought to life a lot of character stuff that I think I'd missed when I've just read them here and there. So yeah, definitely the 87th Precinct series by Ed McBain. Okay, next question. What would you like to reread? So I would really like to reread the Wayfarers series by Becky Chambers. So that's the series that starts with The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. So I have read that one twice because I reread it when the second book came out. But I absolutely love those books. It's 4 books. They work beautifully together in that they are all... There's things that tie them together, but they're all different. They don't follow exactly the same group of characters. The storyline doesn't necessarily continue between them, so I'd really like, and I loved all 4 of them, so I'm keen at some point to reread all 4 of those books, just in one go. They're not terribly long, they're like sort of 300 pages long each, I think, so I might just reread the whole series in one go. Right, next question. What book do you predict will be so good you will want to reread it? I don't know. Like I said, I don't reread a great deal, and when I do, it's usually with a purpose. So I'm not sure that there's anything I've read recently, or I'm sorry, I guess this is books I'm going to read. So I'm not sure there's anything I'm planning to read that will wow me so much that I want to reread it, given that I don't normally reread stuff. Right, next one. Pick a book from your younger years that you think you'd be interested to reread. So I, as a kid, absolutely loved the Swallows and Amazon series by Arthur Ransom, which is a series of books from, I think, kind of the 40s and 50s, about a group of some siblings who go sailing basically on holidays and meet other kids who are into sailing. I really adored those books as a kid. They've got a lovely kind of cosy feel to them, but they're quite exciting as well. Great characters. I mean, they're very of their time in terms of being, kind of upper class English white kids, chilling out in luxury basically. But I really like them, and I would like to. I've got the first one. So I'm definitely going to reread that at some point. And if I enjoy that as much as I'm hoping to, I'll probably pick up the rest of the books in the series as well and reread those. Okay, next question. Question 7. Tell us a series or book that's so big or complex you need to reread to better understand. So in terms of a single book, House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski, which I've done a video of on the channel before, so I really enjoyed it. But I read it like I normally read a book. So, I read it through fairly quickly without digging into the huge amounts of detail that are in there, which I know some people obsess over. So at some point, not anytime soon, but at some point, I'd like to do a more considered reread of it, I guess, and try and dig into that detail a bit more. The other series I think I'm definitely going to, or series that I think I'm definitely going to reread, is A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. So if he ever finishes the series, I'm going to reread all the ones I've read. I think I've read all but one of the ones that are currently available. So I will reread all of those in the run up to finishing the series if he ever gets to it. Okay, next one. Is there a specific type of genre you think is best, worst for reading potential? So I kind of went both ways on this one. So the genre I want to talk about is mysteries. So I really like mystery books, as anyone who watches the channel will know. And I think mystery books can be, depending on how good they are, can be terrible to reread or can be great to reread. And I think the ones that are terrible to reread are the ones where you feel like you've been conned a bit at the end because the author has basically kind of obscured stuff in a slightly underhand way in order to create a mystery, which is something that seems to happen, quite a lot in mysteries. So I think those are terrible to reread because you know the twist, you know the solution to the mystery, so there's no point. A really skillfully done mystery where the author and the reader are kind of allies as the story progresses, and the author structures things in the right way, can be a joy to reread, because when you reread it knowing the solution, the way the author has built up to that can be fascinating to read. So I think mysteries is my answer for that one. Next one, is there a book you liked more upon reread? So, like I said, I don't reread that much, but one that sprung to mind on this one is Slugs by Sean Hudson, which when I first read it, I enjoyed, and that was, I think, probably when I was a teenager. So I enjoyed, but kind of filed it away mentally as, a trashy horror paperback about killer slugs, which is exactly what it is. When I reread it a couple of years ago, I loved it. I think in that book, Sean Hudson does such a fantastic job of taking the reader with him in terms of what he's doing. So, he constructs these really complicated scenarios so that he can get to the gore scenes. And they are just so joyfully and gleefully horrible to read that I felt like I was in the hands of a master. And it was his first book, I think. So the fact he did it so well in that, I think, is wonderful. So it's a terrible, cheesy horror book, but it's beautifully, beautifully done. So yeah, I really enjoyed that second time round. Is there a book you liked less upon reread? So another book that I first read as a teenager, which I reread recently, is At the Mountains of Madness by H.P. Lovecraft. I don't think it was the very first Lovecraft I read. I think I read one of his shorts, quite a short story first. I think it might have been Pickford's Model, or maybe The Rats in the Walls. But At the Mountains of Madness was definitely in the first collection I had. So I have one of the old, I think it was Collins or Granada omnibuses with the great covers. And At the Mountains of Madness, I think, was the first story in that. So definitely one of the first things I read by Lovecraft, and you know, I fell in Lovecraft straight away. Fell in love with Lovecraft. Difficult phrase to say. I fell in love with Lovecraft straight away on reading that as a teenager. When I reread it this year for Horror Mayhem, I didn't like it nearly so much. It felt like there was far too much detail in it, and that kind of just dragged the story and the horror down. So yeah, definitely one that was a bit disappointing on reread. So if you reread, tell us what you'd like to reread before the end of the year. So the Elric saga by Michael Moorcock. So I read the first 2 books in that for February Fantasy Stories. I've subsequently got hold of the lovely Saga Press omnibus editions. So reading those 2 for Horror Mayhem, those were both rereads. So I had read them again when I was a teenager. Now I've got the lovely new edition. I'm going to try and read it. I think read that first volume all the way through. So I'm going to reread those again at some point later on in the year. Okay, that was it for the question. So tag some friends. So I don't think any of these people have done this tag, but if they have, apologies for tagging you. So the first one is Jesse at Bartell's Bookshelf. I'd like to see what you have to say, Jesse. Secondly, Gareth at Book Songs and Other Magic. And then finally, Dave and Olive at Book Blather. So Dave and Olive, I know you don't do tags normally, but you've done a couple recently, and I've really enjoyed both of them. So I think you should do more tags. So I'm tagging you to do this one. So yeah, that's my answers for that one. Hope you enjoyed that. As always, hope you are safe and well and really good stuff. Let me know what your stance on rereads is, whether you enjoy rereading books or not. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I will speak to you again soon. Cheerio.